You're listening to Rhema Radio.
C-A-G-E-D. Caged. Cage works to prevent the government or rogue officers from conducting the illegal act of forcibly disappearing persons. Caged acts for voiceless victims and gagged officials who are bound by oaths or bylaws to keep silent. Go to Caged Facebook, Citizens Against Enforced Disappearances -Caged, to find out how you can support this much needed work.
Shalom, this is Pastor Philip So from GCC Prayer Mountain. We are inviting one and all who want to take watches in a 24-hour prayer chain throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the months and throughout the years until the Lord Jesus comes. Any time of the day, you can come and take watches with us to minister to the King of Kings so that our nation can be blessed, the tribes can be blessed, and the nations can be blessed. You can contact me at 012-200-3961, Philip So. Amen.
Next week's midweek service episode is from Matthew Wong, shared at KLBC Desa Park City, entitled Fly High, Finish Well. Listen to that and other sermons at rhemaradio.io or anywhere else you get your podcasts. And now for this week's interview with co-author of the newly released book, Where is Pastor Raymond Koh? Stephen Ng. Welcome to Rhema Radio, the weekly podcast on faith, culture, music, and more. And today with me in the studio is Stephen Ng, a media consultant and a writer. He has authored 5 books, including topics covering from business, politics, food, travel, to other human interest themes. And today we're going to talk about his latest book, which he co-authored with Datuk Lee Hua Beng, titled Where is Raymond Koh?
Yeah, Pastor Raymond Koh.
Where is Pastor Raymond Koh?
Yeah.
Welcome to the studio, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you.
So, the book was just launched very recently.
It was just fresh from the printing press.
Okay.
Less than a month ago. It's really selling very well.
Okay. And you had a launch event at CCM.
Yes.
How did that event go?
Just very recently. Well, it went on well. It was actually launched by the Most Reverend Reverend Julian.
Okay.
And the book itself is before it was launched, it was already in the market and people were already picking up the books. So I think that the sales so far has actually been very, very good.
So maybe talk about why you went ahead with writing this book and why now.
Okay. Well, actually, when it first started about 2.5 years ago, when I came to know about this case, I was actually very fascinated. I wanted to write something about it, wanted to compile materials and start writing about it. But then I realized that there's a lot of work involved, and I couldn't just do it, on pro bono basis. So I kept it aside until about October last year when Dr. Lee Hua Beng came and he asked me, would you like to write a book? So I said, what book is it? And he says, the title is Where is Pastor Raymond Koh? And I say, wow, okay.
You were already prepared for this?
Yeah, I was all the while prepared. And I must say it was actually God's will that these things happens, at the right timing. Everything was just perfect timing.
Okay. And what was the process like of coming together and interviewing people? And how long did it take and how was it? How was the process like?
Well, when I first started in October last year, the Suhakam proceedings had already started more than a year plus. And because I was not really following the proceedings, I had to depend a lot on the interviews. So much of the early part of the work was actually on interviews. Then later, I managed to get a copy of the notes of proceedings, which is actually a public document as well, although it's not shared out to too many people. But at least it was a public inquiry, and so the documents were actually available to me. And going through 2,000 pages, imagine 2,000 pages of notes of proceeding, everything is all recorded verbatim. It's not easy. So what I did was actually I did interviews with the family, with their friends and relatives, because the fact that I do not know Pastor Raymond Koh that well, or rather I've only met him once on one occasion to say hello and bye, and that's it. I was able to actually look at things more objectively.
Okay.
So when I went through the notes of proceeding, more things came out, and lo and behold, when the conclusion came, we had everything all in one piece. So that was how the process took place over the period of about 5 to 6 months. A lot of work involved, a lot of rewriting. Initially, we had quite a fair bit of comments as well, which were rather negative. And so when the process of rewriting, I had to remove a lot of these negative comments because I have to be neutral, I have to be objective, I have to look at things objectively, I have to be fair to the police as well, and I think the police also need to be given a voice. That's why I had a very specific chapter on them. Of course, I couldn't interview them, but I had the the submission that they gave, and I had to translate it from Bahasa into English. So that's why the flow is not the same as what happens in the other chapters of the book. But I try to stay as closely as what they had to say during the submission. It wasn't actually given verbally. So the thing was actually mainly came from the paper that is submitted. So I managed to get a copy of that as well, and I gave them I think it's a fair kind of representation in the book, so that the book itself is not being unfair to them, because at the end of the day it's the Suhakam decision, that let the Suhakam decision speak for itself. We don't really have to argue the case. We don't really have to say anything else, but just let the Suhakam decision speak for itself.
So, like you said, I think really, I can imagine a lot of work, a
Yes,
lot of hours went to this.
A lot of sleepless nights as well. Yeah.
2,000 pages, and the book, may I ask how many pages is the final book?
About 200 pages.
200 pages.
Yeah,
So
which
it's
is what we wanted actually.
Summarized and all the thought what put into it. And you raised a good point, because the posture of the author is very important. The posture of the writer to be objective, because we are not here to be one-sided, or we don't want to hear someone who's just already in it with an agenda, but
That's
just
right.
to lay the
Yes,
facts,
yes.
especially when you're writing about something which is a non-fiction. This is facts that you're talking about here.
Yes. In fact, actually, objectivity is very important, because in the process of writing it, we did actually get a lot of input from different people. And sometimes, when you do not have enough materials, you have the tendency of accepting everything. But towards the end, I had about 45,000 words. And I know that I had to trim it down to about 35,000 words in order to get about 200 pages. So I had plenty of room to trim down a lot of things, a lot of fluff. I call it the fluff, that can be trimmed down. And then finally it came to that point where I could actually even put one chapter on the police side, so that the whole book itself is as objective as possible. Of course, there's no way I can say it's a 100% objective.
Sure.
There's no way. Because when you listen to the Suhakam inquiry, when you listen to the lawyers asking questions, when you read the notes of proceedings, you tend to have a certain biasness. But we try as much as possible to stay objective.
And I would say writing this book is not just about the passion of writing and also the skill of writing, but truly you need to have the grace to do this.
That's
and
right,
also
yes.
the discernment,
Yes.
what to include when you talk about trimming and how to represent certain
that's right,
things,
yeah.
certain facts.
Yeah.
You would need to, I think prayerfully, you need to
Yeah,
get
that's
into
right.
this as well.
Yeah. No, it's a fact that sometimes when you write certain things, you have to be objective, yes, but at the same time, it has to be truthful as well. You can't really hide the facts, the things that are mentioned in notes of proceedings are very clear, and people need to know, and people need to know that it's not fiction.
Okay.
It is basic facts, that they can actually get from the notes of proceeding. The only difference is that if you read through the notes of proceeding, you may not be able to follow everything thoroughly. But what I've done is actually putting the pieces together, including doing some interviews. If you read in the book, you'll find that some of the style of writing is in the present tense, which means we did an interview with the their family, the friends of Pastor Raymond Koh, and the people involved, so that we can actually put their views in as well. It's not just the proceedings, but it is also their views and the interviews that we did. Like, for example, after writing this book, I realized that, hey, this is a guy who has been living nearly all his life in poverty, and he was actually living in a Malay kampung. Right, so it is very natural because he has this developed. He has developed this heart for the Malay folks. And most of his early childhood friends were all Malays. So I can understand why when he looks at, say for example, the youth in the Sri Sentosa, when he started the Harapan, it was actually not to proselytize. And I can understand why, because he basically wanted to help the marginalized youth. These are young people who had no direction in life at all. And what they did was they just loiter around in front of this mini market called Checkers, and he saw it. And nobody cared for them because no churches would touch them. Nobody would do anything to help them because these are so-called beyond their boundaries. But this guy, Pastor Raymond Koh, has this passion to help these young people. And so he started this reading room, which has a library and it has properly air-conditioned. He had volunteers who actually came to teach the children. And some of them actually did very well in their exams. And as a result of that, they managed to get work. Some of them have become assistant managers and so on. See, I like to interview these people, but unfortunately, none of them could be contacted. And as far as I know, some of them be very successful as well. You see, the point is this. People say that he was trying to proselytize. But as far as I know, from what I gathered from other people whom I interviewed, he always tells the volunteers, never proselytize, never ever mention about Jesus to these people because you are just helping them. You're just helping them. That's it. Don't ever proselytize. This has been the reminder that he has given to all the volunteers. If you don't believe it, you can always ask the volunteers.
Okay. You've been listening to Stephen Ng. We're going to take a short break and we'll come back soon after this to talk more about his book, Where is Pastor Raymond Koh?
Rhema Radio.
Hi, this is Jason Ding, and as we were preparing for this show, Pastor Raymond Koh, this verse stood out for me when I listened to the Bible in 1 Year app, day 198. It's from Amos chapter 5, verse 21 to 24. I'm reading from the Message version. It goes like this. I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religious projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes, your public relation and image making. I've had all I can take of your noisy ego music. When was last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all I want. May God bless the reading of His Word.
Rhema Radio.
Welcome back to Rhema Radio, the weekly podcast on faith, culture, music and more. With me in the studio is Stephen Ng, one of the two authors along with Datuk Lee Hua Beng on the book, Where is Pastor Raymond Koh? So, people who pick up this book, I don't think they expect to actually get the answer of this title, which is Where is Pastor Raymond Koh? What's the thinking behind the title?
I think the answer is very obvious. Nobody knows exactly where he is, whether he's still alive or whether he is no longer here. But one question that I always answer this in this manner. I tell them, where is Pastor Raymond Koh? I tell them the answer is this: he is alive. He's alive because the moment he accepted Christ as his personal Savior, he is born again. He is now having eternal life. Whether it is here on earth or is it in heaven with God, it doesn't matter anymore. So he's still alive.
And also, sorry to interrupt you. What you said earlier before the break was also, I can read it this way as well. Where is Pastor Raymond Koh's heart? his heart is really for the people, the marginalized,
yes.
and that was really his intention for the ministries that he set up.
That's right. Yes.
Not so much of what people think, which is proselytization, which is very people come with a lot of emotions and a lot of.
You see, proselytization has been played up. Okay, it has been played up by the politicians. It has been played up by the bloggers and so on. So the moment you talk about proselytization, they will harp on it and they will talk all sorts of things about it, to the point that it's unbelievable sometimes. The way how these bloggers have written. Okay, but I think the fact still remains that he was actually passionate about helping the marginalized. Look, you see, when he set up the Harapan, it was only mainly to help the marginalized youth, who had no place to go and who were the targets of drug pushers and gangsters, right? And after that, he went on to help the single mothers, because there was another greater need as well. These children came from families who were broken, and some of them had single mothers. And so whatever he could help, he just tried to help. And then after that, he realized that there was also some of them who were drug addicts. And when you have drug addicts, you also have HIV patients. So you see, one thing after another, he started Harapan with first the Rumah, what do you call that, the reading room. And after that, he did another 2 or 3 more homes, one for the drug addicts, then the other one for the HIV. And then also he helped the single mothers, because they needed job, they needed revenue. I think they do not give money to the single mothers, but what they did was they taught them skills, and they helped them to market some of these products that they make. And I think Susanna is doing a great job even now, selling all these necklaces and so on, which she herself does. At the same time, she also tries to sell on behalf of the single mothers, so that there's revenue for these single mothers.
You mentioned Susanna, and we've also had featured them, okay. Susanna and Jonathan, when it first happened 2 months after he was abducted, and then more recently in another show with listeners who want to listen to that. Please look for that show where we interviewed Susanna and Esther. Really, it's not easy to actually talk to them about this topic and just want to get the truth out of it. And how was that experience like? I mean, just really spending time with them.
I must say that during the interviews, I could feel the burden that was on them. They have lost a father, they have lost a husband. It's not easy. They just want to have a closure. I think at the end of the day is what they're looking for is a closure. I believe they have come to the point where they have accepted, be it he is still alive on earth or he's in a greater place. They just want to have a closure. And I think it's healthy for them to actually have a closure and move on in life. Because I think it's not very healthy if they continue on like this 1 year after another. Well, they can, and I think it's at the expense of the authorities, the government, and so on. And I don't think this is something that we want to happen. And I think the task force being set up now gives us some hope on one hand. On the other hand, it also dashes the hope, because the people that were appointed were not people who were well regarded, in terms of their objectivity. I can think of many other people who could have actually been a greater help to the task force. Apart from Ambiga was also involved in the legal team. But there are also other people as well, like, for example, Datuk Farida from G25. There's Datuk from Patriot. There are many people who are actually very objective, and they know what is actually happening in the country. And these other people, including even people like Mariam Mokhtar, if she wants to serve, she can come back and she can actually do something to help, to find the truth. Okay, but instead, what we see is a former police officer who was involved in the legal department was appointed, and then he pulled out, and because of all this ding dong, time is taken up and things are not moving in the right direction. I think at the end of the day is when we talk about a new Malaysia, what everybody is hoping for to see is a new approach, a new way of handling matters like this. And basically it is all about upholding justice. You must understand that all these things happened in the past, in 2017, during the past regime. And partly because of that, I believe, it had come to a point that we cannot tahan anymore.
Yeah.
We cannot tahan anymore. And that is the reason why the former regime collapsed, and we cannot afford to have another round again. If we continue to move in the old-fashioned way of handling sensitive issues like this, trying to cover up, trying to push it aside, trying to brush it aside, and try to say, well, we cannot please everybody. No, I don't think that should be the way we handle things. I think we have to be a bit more proactive, and we must find out where the truth is. Even if we know who actually did it and what actually happened to him, I think there's a word called forgiveness. There's a word that is called forgiveness. And I think the family, maybe at this point in time, I might want to say this, although I do not have their permission, there may be a point in time when they will say, yes, we forgive. Whoever did that to our father, to our husband. Okay, that is not easy. But I think that's a very positive thing that can happen. Because they know, if they continue on with the bitterness in life, they're not going to move on in life. So forgiveness is the best solution. But what we want to know is what actually happened to Pastor Raymond Koh. Was he adopted? What happened to him after that? We know he was adopted, and we know who has the motive of doing that. And we also know who could be involved and why these people were not even called. And they were not even coming forward to say something about their stand and whatever they represent. Why they shouldn't be blamed for it.
Yeah.
The people just disappeared. One was cancelled, and so she didn't turn up. The other one was it just disappeared. So all these things have to come up to the surface. And I think the task force has a responsibility to bring out all these things in the past that has happened, bring it all up, okay, and say, okay, this is the past. We have learned from our lessons. We should not continue on with this way of handling issues. We have to put a stop to it. That's it, and move on from there. Yeah. Otherwise, we will continue to be, living in the past, and we will never move forward.
Hold that thought. You've been listening to Stephen Ng, and again, all you've shared is really, I think, what we need to hear. And like you say about moving forward, when we come back after this break, we'll talk about how we're going to move forward from all this. Stay tuned.
Rhema Radio.
Nama saya Victor J. Benjamin. Saya pastor daripada Gereja SIB Jalan Aman, Sandakan, Sabah. Kami mahu mendoakan Pastor Raymond Koh. Mari kita mendoakan keluarganya, khususnya istrinya, 2 anaknya, cucunya, supaya keluarga ini mengalami damai sejahtera Tuhan. Bapa yang dalam nama Yesus Kristus, kami menghampiri takhta-Mu yang kudus. Kami membawa Pastor Raymond Koh yang masih hilang. Kami percaya Tuhan melihatnya. Tuhan tahu dia di mana dia berada. Dan malaikat Tuhan menjaganya, akan membantunya Tuhan. Apapun keadaan Pastor Raymond hari ini, kami percaya Tuhan, rencana-Mu berdiri untuk Malaysia, terjaga. Tapi Tuhan, mari Engkau hiburkan keluarganya. Comfort them. Istrinya, anak-anaknya Tuhan. Biar mereka merasakan Engkau ada di tengah-tengah mereka dan tidak meninggalkan mereka. Berikan satu kekuatan yang luar biasa daripada dalam hati mereka. Bapa, dalam nama Yesus Kristus, hamba doakan supaya keadilan ditegakkan untuk keluarga ini. Engkau bongkarkan dalang di sebalik ini semua. Engkau dedahkan di mana Pastor Raymond berada dalam waktu yang terdekat ini. Ini permintaan kami, semua gerejamu di Malaysia. Dalam nama Yesus Kristus kami minta. Amin.
Rhema Radio.
Welcome back to Rhema Radio, the weekly podcast on faith, culture, music and more. Today we are talking to author Stephen Ng, one of two authors along with Datuk Lee Hua Beng, on the book Where is Pastor Raymond Koh? And we talked about really the word here is closure. And I sympathize really because if you as a family member, you do not know whether you should stop or you should continue. And if you stop, there's guilt that comes with it because what if, there's still hope. But then again, for how long? 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years? It's really heavy. And what you've said is true. What I think most everybody wants, including even Malaysians, I mean, not just family.
Malaysians
we
in general,
just want some form of closure, some form of, what really happened. And it's just frustrating, Although when it happened more than 2 years ago, it shocked the country and everyone was very, on the case and wanting to know the latest development. But 2 years have passed, and attention has sometimes have waned off a bit, and different things have come, and people have moved on. But I think we need to continue talking because again, there's no closure. And my question is actually what. The word is not what good, but what can we learn from all this, and how can we be more prepared as a community, as Malaysian, even in this new climate of New Malaysia? If something like this were to happen again, do you think the responses have been good so far? Like I know you mentioned earlier that it's not enough, but maybe just for those who knew about the case and then lost momentum and lost touch of it, maybe just a quick summary of where we are at now and moving forward, where we should go.
You see, when I was writing this book, I did a lot of interviews as well with people in Sabah and Sarawak. I was amazed to see how many people actually came for the candlelight virtues. Thousands of people literally came forward. I think it's even more than people in Peninsular Malaysia. I think sometimes we being in the peninsula, we should be embarrassed of ourselves because we're so busy with so many things. But in Sabah and Sarawak, a few thousand people came. And I must say that there is such a great unity in the body of Christ.
When was this?
In 2018, 2017,
Okay.
yes. And this is what Paul says. I mean, if one body suffers, all suffer together, right? So this is where it really inspires me when I was writing that the book itself. In the end, I decided to put them into 3 separate chapters on the candlelight virtues because it's such a beautiful, beautiful demonstration of unity, of people, not only of Christians but also of non-Christians, Muslims, politicians, non-politicians, people from all walks of life. In fact, in Seremban, I was told that even the monks came, and they stood together with the Christian community. The Hindus came, the Sikhs came, the Muslims came. So this is something that, has never happened before. In fact, I must say that during the general election, on the night of the general election itself, I called up Baru Bian. And I asked him, how's the situation over there? I mean, knowing Baru, I just called him just to find out what's happening in Sarawak. And he said, the ground has shifted, And I wouldn't be surprised that because of this case, because of Pastor Raymond's case, the church has moved forward and the people have come to this, realization that they must stand together. They must stand together. Enough is enough. I always said when, during the old regimes, enough is enough. So things have actually come to this stage where people have come to a very strong realization that unless they're united, they will not be able to change for the better. And I think currently the new government is a little bit more positive, I must say. Still a lot of room for improvement. Okay, we have a new IGP, and I must salute this guy. After he retired, he went into farming. Okay, and to me, it is something very interesting because, a police officer who went to farming means that he didn't really have plenty of money to splash. Okay, he went into a very humble, very quiet life. Okay, and just did whatever he could to earn a living. And I think we do actually have a very good IJP, and I think we also have a very good, lady as well in MACC. We have people in Parliament like Arif, with the Speaker. People who are very respectable in their own, in their own way. Including even our friend in EC as well. We need people like that. And so, therefore, I would say that, yes, we are moving forward. And I'm hoping that with the setup of the new task force, the right people will be selected, not people who raises doubt, especially with the civilian society. If you can't really convince the civilians, who can you convince as politicians, And bear in mind that if it can happen to a simple pastor like Pastor Raymond Koh and also Amri Chetmat, okay, and the other two, the couple Joshua and Ruth Helmi, right? It can also happen to the politicians, And I suspect that if this whole thing did not stop, whoever was involved in this whole thing could have been used by the political masters as well, all right, to adopt Lim Kit Siang, Lim Guan Eng, or maybe somebody else, or maybe even Muhyiddin, because he was actually against against the administration at that time. So if these things do happen, then there's no justice, there's no rule of law. Okay, therefore, in order for us to move forward, we have to hold on to the rule of law and to ensure that the right people are in place as we currently have, and to be able to administer justice. And I think justice is for the government to make sure that the truth is being unearthed.
So you mentioned, you mentioned that the government the change government is good, and it's encouraging to hear these good people in place, but there's room for improvement.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe you could talk a bit about what, being close to this case and seeing it from your point of view. I think Christians and our listeners may want to know, how can we pray and how can we even have conversations, or maybe raise their voice, not in angry way, but just some form of influential way. What can be done better by the current government in this regard?
Okay, I think prayer is is essential, especially when you can't really change things. All right. We just have to continue to pray, like what we did. Most of us did, and we saw the May 9th. Okay, the change of government. It was mind-boggling as well when I think about it, how the government could change after 61 years. So now the thing is, with this current task force, we just have to continue to pray. And at the same time, we need to speak up. I think a lot of NGOs have already spoken up, so I just keep quiet about it. But I think a lot of NGOs have already spoken up. They know the background of the people being selected into the task force, and they have voiced it out. And therefore, it's time for the government also to listen to the people, not to say that, you're trying to please everybody. You can't please everybody, but at least, make sure that the right people are appointed to the task force. You see, one of the things that for the continuation of this Suhakam Inquiry, and to make sure that the new task force does not have to start from the beginning again, is to have someone like Datuk Maweng Kwai, who is the chairman of the panel, and two of his assistants as well, Dr. Okay, there are two doctors, okay? They are lecturers and they are law professors and so on. So the three of them in the panel actually would be very useful in order for the task force to expedite the case and to make sure that the case is actually being heard by the public as well. Anything that you hide, will raise more suspicion. So it's best to open it and let people know what actually happened, because being politicians, you just have to make sure that the public knows that you are doing the right thing. So it's not covering up, not doing what they call that, not doing magic and so on, okay, and come up with a decision that reverses the Suhakam Inquiry. A lot of us have been expecting that, and we have been speculating that. So no point of having that kind of a conclusion. See, what is important is we must come to a final closure, right? We must come to a final closure so that we can know what actually happened during that, what actually happened before that adoption, what actually happened during the adoption and after the adoption, and how, after knowing all these things, how we can move forward, how the police force can rectify all these past mistakes and move forward. Because like I said just now, I have a lot of friends in the police force. Even my late father was actually in the police force as well. My uncles and so on, some of them were actually in the police force. So I do have a lot of friends, and also I do not want to say anything unnecessary, but I want to say this. We have to move forward. We have to know what happened. We need to know what happened, and we need to get things right so that the police force can move forward and be respected. The most important key word is to be respected by society for their uprightness, for their integrity, for their willingness to correct themselves and to get things right this time.
And like you said, justice, because even you shared earlier about how people come, when they came together, it's not about religion, it's about right and wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not about political parties.
Yes, exactly.
It's not about who's in control, who's in power, but ultimately, what are the facts, what is right, what is justifiable, and then the truth prevails.
That's right, yes.
Final thoughts. What are your hopes for the book? Coming back to your book, when people read it, what are your hopes for that? And where can they get a copy?
Well, they can actually get it from MPH, Popular, Borders, Canaan Land, and a number of other places.
Can they get it online?
They can get it online. They can go to MPH, they can go to Canaan Land. I think they can also go to Borders and Popular, and they can get it online. So the book itself is not expensive. The money goes to the family, to the sustenance of the family, because whatever that is sold, all right, the proceeds go to them. Because it was actually Datuk Lee Hua Bing's idea to have some kind of funds to help the family, to get to their own feet, and the children can actually have an education, and they'll be able to start working and so on, and then they can actually continue on. Because I think Datuk Lee Hua Bing has known the family for many, many years. That's why he feels very strongly that he needed to help them. And that's why the book has come about. And I think if anybody has a copy of the book, make sure you read it. Don't just buy it and keep it in the shelf. Make sure you read it. And if you can actually afford, 10 copies of the book, 350 ringgit, buy them and give them away to all your friends. So I don't make any profit out of it, but I must say that the book needs to be read so that you understand what is actually happening in the country beyond just Pastor Raymond Koh's adoption or the adoption of Amri Chekman. It is actually the overall landscape, that the political landscape, social political landscape that the country has come into. And this is something that is very serious. I think it's time for us to really know what is actually happening, especially for our brothers and sisters in Sabah and Sarawak. You may not have access to the book, but I think the book actually will help you to understand what is happening to Malaysia. Okay, and it's not just in West Malaysia, but also going to happen, someday and very soon, even in Sabah and Sarawak, if we do not prevent this kind of enforced disappearance. I think it is good that we have a change of government. It's good that the government is becoming more proactive, and I think we have to prevent things like this happening again. Thank you.
So you've been listening to Stephen Ng, co-author of Where is Pastor Raymond Koh? He co-authored this book along with Datuk Lee Hua Beng, and we hope that you go out there and get yourself a copy, and also bless someone with it. And we hope that reading this book would enlighten and bring light to the scenario and have a better picture of things. You've been listening to me, Jason, on Rhema Radio, the weekly podcast on faith, culture, music, and more.
Kami sembah nama
This segment's song is from SIB Lake City. Do connect with us at facebook.com/RhemaRad.10. Comment, like, and share our weekly shows so that we can do more. Contact us at hello@rhemarad.io. We would love to hear from you. Listen to all past shows by searching Rhema Radio on the following apps: Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. This week's interview is hosted by me, Jason Ding, and this episode was audio edited and mixed by Moses Chan of Produce Studios. Until our next show, remember to pursue justice and fairness, especially for those who are unable to defend themselves. As a united community, we can make a real difference. God bless.
I found it on Rhema Radio.